Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is ditch, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Abdi. Abdi, thank you so much for this suggestion. Now, let's spend a moment reviewing some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb ditch means to make or repair ditches. Now, you can probably tell from this first definition that we'll be discussing a noun form of this word. And as you think about this first definition, you might think of sort of the areas just off a road that can help drain water. And so work connected to the creation of those will lead to the first usage for this verb. Now, that's probably not the most common way that you'll actually hear and see it used. A second way, though, that is more common would mean to get rid of something or to give something up. This is a very popular way to use this verb. And for many years, it was considered to be a bit more informal in its usage, but you will see all kinds of examples. In fact, many people who are in the business of recommending different products and services frequently say, I got rid of this one thing and now I'm doing this. And this is the verb that they use. We'll see an example of this a little bit later, but it's just, again, like it sounds, so I'm not going to use it any longer. A third, and again, more informal way to use this verb ditch can mean to abandon and end a relationship with someone. So you might hear this used in connection to romantic relationships, but it could also be used in connection to friendships as well. A fourth way to use the verb ditch can mean to skip class or school. I feel like that was probably a more common usage in past times. Maybe not quite as common in 2025, just as our language evolves, but you'll still see references to it in books and movies, TV shows, and the like. A fifth way you may encounter the verb ditch is very specific to aircrafts. And if they're forced to make some kind of emergency landing on water, then this verb gets used as well. Now, for now, you should know that ditch is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms ditching. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by adding ed. Now, the base verb, ditch, ends in an unvoiced sound. And this means our ed ending is going to make a T sound, and we're not going to add an extra syllable as we say it. So the past tense and the participle form of our verb should sound like this. Ditched, ditched. Okay. Now, this is another verb where we really don't have any phrasal verbs to discuss. So instead, we'll move on and do a little verb tense practice. Today, we're going to review the simple past tense and the imperative. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions that occurred at a known point in the past. Sometimes these sentences will include time signals. It could be a word like yesterday, could be a specific date in the past, or it might be something like 3 weeks ago. And also times, not just dates, I should say, as well. But not all sentences in the simple past will have that. The known point in the past can be implied as part of a longer passage or as part of a conversation. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple past tense is that your structure is going to stay the same no matter what your subject is. So in the affirmative or positive, we'll start with a subject, then we're going to use that ed form of the verb. You can see this in my first one here. We set up passkeys on our phone and ditched passwords for good. Okay. This is an example of what I was talking about earlier, kind of like comparing two things. I've seen a lot of references in regards to technology and different things that get updated or improved on. So there were certain people saying, I ditched this old browser to use this new one, and so on and so forth. This example sentence is, again, comparing ways to access and provide authentication so that others are not accessing unauthorized accounts or maybe emails, other platforms, and the like. Now let's talk about making a sentence in the negative in the simple past tense. To do this, again, we start with a subject, then we use did not, and then the base verb. Notice we're not using the ed form of the verb here. Here's another example sentence. Americans didn't ditch tea after tossing it overboard into Boston Harbor. So this sentence, while it might not seem like it has a specific time reference, it does. It's referring back to the 1700s and the Boston Tea Party, which was something that kind of led up to the American Revolutionary War. But what this sentence really means in its usage of ditch here is that people kept drinking and consuming tea. They didn't abandon it or stop using it. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, we want to start with did, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. I always like to point out to my students, maybe to the point that I'm becoming annoying. Notice I'm not using the ed form of my verb here in my yes or no questions. The only time I'm doing that is in the affirmative. So here's my last simple past tense example. Did they ditch the plane in the lake? So that's going to go back to that last definition, meaning they had to make an emergency water landing. Now let's move on and talk about making sentences in the imperative. The imperative is really a command. We are telling either one person or many people to either do a particular action or not do an action. We do not have any questions in the imperative, and it's also unique in English because we do not have a stated subject. The subject is said to be implied or understood. It's you, the person to whom I'm speaking, whether that's one you or two or more, so singular or plural you. So in the affirmative, we can just begin with our base verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. So here someone says, ditch your jacket. It's going to be very warm today, right? So they're maybe telling you, leave it at home, leave it in the car. You are abandoning it or putting it to the side, okay? I also like to note, as we talk about this is different than giving advice, right? We use should quite frequently or ought to with advice. With the imperative, we're telling someone to do this particular thing, not suggesting like it would be a good idea if, okay? Now let's look at making a negative sentence in the imperative. To do this, you can begin with do not and then the base verb, or don't, the contraction, and then the base verb. Here's another example sentence. Don't ditch your lifelong friends. So here someone is saying, don't end these relationships. Don't abandon these people you've maybe known for a really long time. I feel like this kind of direction is given sometimes to people in their teens and 20s, maybe they're having a difficult period or time. They're kind of like, that's it, I'm done with this particular person. And maybe someone older and wiser is trying to sort of caution them about that. One last note about the imperative. Many times students will tell me that it can feel a bit rude or maybe a bit too assertive to just tell someone to do something. So if you're concerned about being polite, you can always add the word please to the beginning of the sentence in the imperative, or add please to the end. This is true in the affirmative or the negative, but you only need it in one place. So we don't have to start "and" in the sentence with please. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words related to our verb ditch. And I already sort of mentioned that we have a noun form of this word. The noun ditch has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. When we use this word as a noun, we're talking about a narrow channel that is usually dug into the ground, and it is most commonly used for drainage, so having water kind of run off, and it might be used alongside a road or maybe on the edge of a field. An example of this used in a sentence could be, he drove the tractor into the ditch. So this sounds like an accident, hopefully not on purpose. This can be a challenging thing depending on how steep it is. To help us better understand what I'm referring to, I also have a picture in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can see a road, and then you can kind of see the grass and trees off to the side there, and there's actually what looks to me like a Jeep. Or some type of vehicle that is in the ditch. It has rolled onto its side. So it can be really scary and dangerous. So good word to know to keep us a little safer, hopefully, if we're on the road. One more word for today. It's another noun, and it's ditch digger. This is referring to someone who creates and forms, digs ditches. This is thought to be extremely difficult work, requiring just a lot of physical strength and energy. And so sometimes it's used just to refer to really challenging manual labor. So an example of this in a sentence could be, he's been a farmer, soldier, and ditch digger. He isn't afraid of hard work. So these are jobs that require a lot of physical strength and endurance, and maybe that helps illustrate that second sentence, that this is someone who does not shy away from doing challenging things. I want to say another special thanks to Opti for recommending today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.